चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै
श्री गुरुवे नमः। श्री मनोभीष्टं स्थापितं भूतले स्वयं
रूप कदा स्वपदान्तिकम् वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरुं श्रीयुतापदाकमलं श्रीगुरून् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं सक्रजातं सहगणा रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं स्ववधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्ण चैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधाकृष्णपादान् सहगणा ललिता हे कृष्ण करुणा
सिंधु दीनबंधु गोपेश
प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये वाञ्छकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपासिन्धु एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि श्री गौरभक्तवृंद हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण।
Hare Krishna, everybody. Hare Krishna. Prabhuji, today we have Dina Sharan Das Prabhuji from USA who has joined us again from Friday, and we are very, very grateful to him. Prabhuji, on behalf of the whole group from all over the world, we'd like to offer our humble obeisances. All glory to Prabhupada. Just a brief introduction. Maybe there might be somebody who's new today. Prabhuji was initiated in 1976 and he is a disciple of Srila Prabhupada, and he has served in lots of temples for 11 years. Since then, he's working full-time assisting ISKCON with fundraising, website, astrology, and computer skills. Since the last 14 years, he has focused on answering questions and counseling devotees online. He's very active on Facebook and he has reached 10,000 new people monthly. So we are very fortunate to have Prabhuji with us. So I hope you will enjoy the benefit of his association like we all did last week. Prabhuji, we are reading the Bhagavad Gita as it is. We are on chapter 4. The title of the chapter is Transcendental Knowledge. And today we are on text 27. Hare Krishna. Prabhuji,
So if we could do as we did on Friday, you can lead the, have the verse and transliteration carried on there, please.
Okay, Prabhuji. So we'll read the verse and the translation. Shashwin, let's read the verse and don't stop, just read the whole verse.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
सर्वाणि इन्द्रियकर्माणि प्राणकर्माणि च आत्मसंयम yoga gunau jugati jnana dite. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much, Shashmi. Prabhuji, we do word-to-word translation? Or we just read the translation?
Translation, yes.
Okay, translation. I'll read the translation. Others who are interested in achieving self-realization through control of mind and senses offer the functions of all the senses and of life breath as oblations into the fire of the controlled mind. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So we could take turns reading the purport through. I might interrupt, but maybe not.
Okay. So, Kruti, can you start the purport, and when you are tired, you can stop, and some Divyesh Prabhuji can take over. Kruti, better?
Yes, yeah, okay.
Hare Krishna.
Purport. The yoga system conceived by Patanjali is referred to herein. In the Yoga Sutra of Patanjali, the soul is called Atma and Prayag Atma. As long as the soul is attached to some sense enjoyment, it is called Prayag Atma, but as soon as the same soul becomes detached from such sense enjoyments, it is called Pratyag Atma. The soul is subject to the functions of 10 kinds of air at work within the body, and this is perceived through the breathing system. The Patanjali system of yoga instructs one on how to control the functions of the body's air into technical manner so that ultimate functions of the air within becomes favorable for purifying the soul of material attachment. According to this yoga system, Pratyagatma is the ultimate goal. The Pratyagatma is withdrawn from activities in matter. The senses interact with the sense objects like ears for hearing, eyes for seeing, nose for smelling, tongue for tasting, and hand for touching, and all of them are thus engaged in activities outside the self. They are called the functions of the prana vayu. The apana vayu goes downwards, vyana vayu acts to shrink and expand, and samana vayu adjusts equilibrium. Udana vayu goes upwards, and when one is enlightened, one engages all this in such self-realization. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Prabhuji, over to you now.
Okay, Hare Krishna. I offer my respectful obeisances to all the assembled devotees, and I thank you for the opportunity to be of service. Om Jnana Timirandasya Kinanjana Shalakaya Takshur Anumaditam Jaina Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I offer my respectful obeisances unto my beloved spiritual master, who has opened my darkened eyes with the torchlight of transcendental knowledge. So this chapter, Transcendental Knowledge, continues Lord Krishna's instruction about the nature of our self, the soul, and the process of liberating ourselves. We may remember that Arjuna finally surrendered to Lord Krishna in the second chapter and said, I don't know what to do. And Lord Krishna began the instruction, speaking about the nature of ourself as eternal, undying, primeval, different in the body, nahanyate hanyamani sharire, never born, never die. At the end of the chapter, the second chapter, going into the third chapter, Arjuna says that I understand you're saying that I'm spiritual, I'm a soul, I should be focused on the spiritual side, but how do I act? Because I do have a material body and I am in this world, so what do I do? So the third chapter was Karma Yoga, about how to live in this world without reaction. And this fourth chapter continues the discussion, and there's more direct information. Lord Krishna, in the beginning of the fourth chapter, described how he is eternal. And he is aware of everything. Although many, many births Arjuna and he have taken, Lord Krishna remembers all of them, but Arjuna does not. So the fourth chapter goes on to discuss the process of realizing this, of actually experiencing ourself as spirit and Krishna as spirit. The process of self-realization or yoga. So in these verses, Lord Krishna is describing that as a general principle, in order to realize ourself, we have to go within. We cannot be very busy in central activities and expect to realize our inner nature, our inner identity. There has to be sacrifice. We sacrifice our interest and our desires for sense gratification, for sense contact of this body, so that we can focus upon the spiritual dimension. Just like now, all of us here are sacrificing. We could be doing so many different things, right? We could be going to the beautician to get our hair fixed. We could be cooking or eating, playing cricket. But we have decided that I will sacrifice this hour or so that I can become more Krishna conscious. So we are doing this process right now. Now, Srila Prabhupada, and of course when we say Srila Prabhupada, that automatically Lord Krishna, because when he speaks, it's not some man who's speaking something that he invented. He is repeating the transcendental knowledge given by Krishna. So Lord Krishna explains earlier in the third chapter that when we sacrifice, it implicitly means that it's understood that we're valuing something. Otherwise, why would we sacrifice? When our husband stops to get us some flowers on the way home from work, instead of just coming home to watch the cricket game, that means he values us. Otherwise, why would he take the time from his cricket game? Or the woman is cooking and she knows her children like some special thing. She could just make dal and rice. But because she values her children, she takes a little extra trouble. Even she has a headache and it's hot. So as it said, words are cheap. Actions speak louder than words. Anyone can say anything, you know? The wife or the husband can say, I love you, but where is it? Let's see it. From the Vaishnava point of view, love begins with Shantaras, respect, that specifically Krishna, that you exist, I respect you. It is a type of love. And love deepens into, with Lord Krishna, the conjugal ras. So we say love, but it includes the whole spectrum. So we can tell that someone appreciates us or values us by their actions. When we take our time to hear Bhagavad Gita, to chant our japa, to see the deities, when we take time to pay attention to Lord Krishna, from his point of view, we may be thinking, I don't have any love. I'm thinking I'd rather be somewhere else, or I'm forcing myself to do it. But from Lord Krishna's point of view, this person is interested in me because they're sacrificing. This is a very important principle to keep in mind, that Lord Krishna, he is very keen on our intent, our heart. What's that verse about offering prasadam? Patram pustam palam tupoyam yome bhakja pranashti. Tesham satatam yuktinam bhajatam priti porvakam. Krishna's interested in our priti, in our heart, not the external perfection. We may not play the mridanga just so, you know, we may not have the best pronunciation when we chant the mantras, but what Lord Krishna is interested in is our heart. I can think back to when I did pujari service in different temples. Who remembers what are the three most important principles of taking care of our deities, of deity service? What are the three most important principles? Who has heard something?
Punctuality.
Punctuality. Two more.
Cleanliness.
Cleanliness. Someone else? Anyone? All right, Ami. The third one?
No, I don't know the third one.
Opulence. So these are the three most important principles that Srila Prabhupada gave us: punctuality, cleanliness, and opulence. The most important is punctuality. The next is cleanliness. We don't, not a minute early, not a minute late, especially in our ISKCON temples, opening the curtains, closing the curtains, offering arti, punctuality, and then cleanliness. So what is it about that, punctuality? Because to be punctual means we care, means we show respect. Just like if we're supposed to meet a friend and they say, yes, I'll meet you at 3 p.m. But they're not there at 3:30, 3:45. You know, maybe there's a good reason, but often it indicates they don't respect us. They don't have consideration for us. Otherwise, at least they would call, sorry, won't be there. So punctuality, it sends a signal to Krishna that we care. And then cleanliness is very helpful for us to remain clean inside. So in doing service, I can remember some days I would get up and, you know, bathe and go down to do the Mangal Arati. And I can't say I was full of prema and here's Lord Krishna. It was like, I'm here. You know, I'm standing here. I'm offering the articles. That's the best I can do right now. I'm sorry. So, but that is a kind of love. Fortunately, Krishna, from Krishna's point of view, if they didn't care, the guy wouldn't be here, right? So sacrifice. What is the main sacrifice for the age of Kali? What is the best sacrifice for the age of Kali? Who can say?
Chanting.
Chanting, yes. Kali Kalarnam Krishna Rupa Avatavata Kirtana Neva Krishnasya Mukta Sangha Param Bhajet. That in the age of Kali, the Sankirtan, the congregational chanting. And what are the two most important principles of bhakti? There are 9 principles of bhakti. Who remembers the most important in the age of Kali?
Chanting and
Yes, Shravanam, which is hearing, and Kirtanam. Just like Maharaj Pariksit gave us the example, what did Maharaj Pariksit do for self-realization? What did he do? What was his?
Shravanam.
Shravanam, hearing. Shrinvata Swakata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana Hridayanta Sto Abadani Vitanoti Sarit Satam Nasta Pareshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. So this hearing and chanting, it is the main sacrifice. We were discussing on Friday how we may not feel like reading Bhagavad Gita or hearing lecture, but because we're adults and we know that we should, we do it anyway. And we may be reading and we're thinking, oh, I really want to go eat. I really want to go ride my bike. I want to sleep. Let's put our cards on the table. These things go through our mind. There's multiple threads that often go through our mind, especially in the stage of Vaidhi Bhakti. Vaidhi Bhakti is the stage of, who remembers, as opposed to Raganuga Bhakti. There's Vaidhi Bhakti and Raganuga Bhakti. So what's Vaidhi Bhakti? What's the principle of it that's different than Raganuga Bhakti? Take a guess. Someone? Be bold. I'm sure someone knows. So Vaidhi Bhakti means regulated, obedient. Krishna is God. My spiritual master is the representative of Krishna. I must do it. Feel like it, don't feel like it. That's not something we think about. I must do it. So that's Vaidhi Bhakti, obedience. And Raganuga Bhakti, probably someone remembers what Raganuga Bhakti is.
Spontaneously.
What is that?
I do it spontaneously out of love.
Spontaneously, yes. The stages of devotion are that first we have some interest, adal shraddha, that maybe there's something more. What is this Krishna consciousness? We start associating with devotees, sadhu sangha. And then what do? What's the stage after sadhu sangha? We may not know, I'm just asking. So the next stage is bhajana kriya, that I'm hearing the devotees and I'm hearing that the process is to chant Hare Krishna and to read and hear about Krishna. So I do the bhajana kriya. And then as a result of the hearing and the chanting, the next stage is, or we enter into the next stage. Who remembers?
Anat-nivritti.
Yes, Narta Nivritti. Anartas mean? What's an anarta?
Unwanted things in the heart.
Such as?
Lust, anger, greed, attachment.
Yes. So that verse, Nasta Pareshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. By hearing about Krishna, hearing lectures, Lord Krishna takes a broom, Srila Prabhupada describes, and he sweeps up. We don't have to do anything else. It's not an intellectual exercise. We just have to sit there and let our eyes move across the page, or we just have to sit there and listen. That's all we have to do. Because it's not academic, it's mystical in a sense. From Lord Krishna, it goes back to sacrifice, that from Lord Krishna's point of view, he sees that we're pushing ourselves to chant our rounds or to sing bhajan, or we're pushing ourselves to study the books about him. And from his point of view, it's love. It's the beginning of love. It's, I know you're there and I want to know more about you. And even though Krishna is aware we may have other things going on in our mind, he doesn't see that. All he sees is, wow, they're interested in me. And then what he does as reciprocation is that he takes away the abhadras. He takes away the unwanted things. And the process of hearing about Krishna is Shrinvata Swakata Punya. It is pious just to do it. Just by letting our eyes move across the page. We may be thinking, I'm not remembering anything. I'm not having any realization. But even if we just do it, we rack up pious credits, transcendental credits. And they accumulate that by doing that. Shrimvata Swakata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana Ridyanta Sto Abhajani. There it is again, Abhajani Vidanoti Sarit Satam. So sacrifice. So we're back to this sacrifice. And in the age of Kali, the way that we show Krishna that we want him is especially by chanting and hearing about him, reading about it. It is a jagya. When we sit down with Srimad Bhagavatam or Nectar Devotion or Chaitanya Charitamrita or whatever it is just like the pujari who's offering in the temple. It is even better. It is just like we can picture, sometimes we hear about yogis. They sit in a ring of fire and it's in the summer And in this way, they get some transcendental knowledge. So our ring of fire, our tapasya, is that even though we may not feel like it, we hear about Krishna anyway. This is my tapasya. I don't really, sometimes I may not feel like it. Sometimes my mind has other things, but I do it anyway. I push myself to do it. This is Vaidhi Bhakti. This is Bhajana Kriya. And if we do that rigidly, the more we do that, and truly, the more we do that, then anartha nivritti. Anartha nivritti is it especially happens to the extent that we hear and chant, and also it takes time because we have these habits for many, many lifetimes, and it may take weeks or months, may even take years for them to melt away. I can remember living in the temple, and there were devotees back then. We often had these little notebooks, and we would make notes. Have to wash the prasadam room floor, have to buy flowers for the deities, this, so many busy activities. But we should be careful about that. The mind is very, very tricky. The mind can sometimes come up with the most noble sounding excuses to avoid hearing about Krishna. We already know that our mind, to one degree or the other, no sane person on this planet wants to hear about how I should give up sense gratification, so to speak. Who wants to hear that? And there's still parts of us that don't want to hear it. We don't want to hear about how there's God and I should do exactly what he wants. Who wants to hear that, so to speak? Until the stage of prema, actually, there is some tiny microscopic aversion to Krishna. It's not something we already know. Everyone, to one degree or the other, has some lack of interest in Krishna. That's one of the symptoms of our fallen situation. But as Kirtika Patel was sharing with us on Friday about the sugar cane, that when we have jaundice, part of the treatment is often to take sugar. But in the beginning, because of the jaundice, it tastes bitter. And what's the solution? You got to do it anyway. You got to tolerate the bitterness. So our sacrifice, our sitting in the ring of fire, is that no matter what, we have our schedule of hearing Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, and we do it. And Krishna will be very happy with us, and he will help us tremendously because we're showing that we're interested in him. Yeah, so this is good. And gradually, after the stage, not after, because these stages, they're kind of mixed together. It's not that there's Adau Shraddha, Bhajana Kriya, and they stop. No, it doesn't work like that. As we begin Bhajana Kriya, we begin Anartha Nivritti, and then the stage after Anartha Nivritti is Nishtha, or faith. We cannot have very strong faith in Krishna if our mind is too attracted to things out there in the material world. It will give us doubts. The more that our mind has interest in materialism, we will automatically have doubts. It's guaranteed. Because our mind will be wanting to find some excuse to do the materialism. As our desires for material-related enjoyment go down, our faith in Krishna automatically increases. Nishtha. We're not distracted. So we're doing Bhajana Kriya. Even in the stage of Raganuga Bhakti, we're doing Bhajana Kriya. But our anarthas become less, and our faith increases. And who remembers the stage after Nishtha? Not after, but it gradually increases after Nishtha. We have Anartha Nivritti, we have Nishtha, then we have
Bhav?
what is the stage after Nishtha?
Is it Bhav?
It is, but before Bhav, after Nishtha is Ruchi. We get a taste. We can't wait to get home from work, take a shower, and hear Bhagavad Gita. Someone said, hey, you want to go to the video game parlor? No, I just really want to hear about Krishna, take care of my deities. So this is ruchi, taste. And that taste, that genuine, yeah, I like this. This is good. It increases, it deepens into emotional attachment, which is called a shakti. That we actually have, it's not just that we prefer devotional activities more, but we actually begin to have emotional attachment to our spiritual master in Krishna. It is said by the Vaishnava acharyas that once we reach the stage of a shakti, as we enter it, then our devotional life becomes downhill. Not that we can be careless, but once we reach this stage of a shakti, it's much more a downhill process. We're not fighting our mind anymore. So, and then as, who was it? Amide was it said that after a Shakti comes Baba, which is a very advanced stage of intense emotional attachment to Krishna. We begin to understand our eternal spiritual relationship, our identity with Krishna, a very, very advanced stage. And then after that, that Baba thickens, we awaken into Krishna prema. So that is the process. But so we are, most of us, at least I am, we're in the stage of Vadi Bhakti. We don't have that much taste, and we're performing the bhajana kriya obligatorily because it's our medicine. And it is our sacrifice. So I started to say about this little book of things to do and how tricky the mind is. So we should be careful. You know, well, I'm going to work an extra 5 hours so I can give an extra $300 to the temple. You know, I'm going to stay up late and wash the whole kitchen in the temple. And that sounds really Krishna conscious. That sounds really noble. But in fact, it could be that we're avoiding hearing about Krishna. Yes. Instead of going to the evening class, our mind will find any excuse sometimes to avoid it. Now, it might be said that we don't want to, Srila Prabhupada said that when we're training, when one is training a lion, one does not want to, that sometimes you feed the lion, sometimes you scare the lion. So there's a balance. We don't want to push ourselves so far that we hate it. You know, I'm not saying that, you know, it's coming to the point that, well, I'm going to make myself read, but inside I'm practically cursing that I'm doing it. No. If it comes to that point, then better we do what we would like to do. Go do something else. But there should be some pressure, some pushing. Not that, well, I don't feel like it. No, I must. That's Vaidhi Bhakti. Another, what I felt was very important thing to revisit. I think many devotees may have heard this, but I think it's a very important thing for us to think about, related to the life airs and eating. It is, some of us may be familiar, that in the system of yoga and understanding of the life airs and the chakras, that the prana, how many people have heard about prana? Prana. So the life air, these are like electromagnetic energies in the body, and there's 10 of them. And prana is the main one, and it directly connects to our mind. Prana. That is why there's pranayama. If we're having an agitated mind and we know it, and we don't want to bother other people, we might want to practice some simple pranayama exercises. They will calm the mind. Like we breathe in and out evenly. 5 in, 5 out, 5 in, 5 out. It will calm the mind because the prana is directly connected to the mind. And prana is not just this air. It's an electromagnetic energy as well. When we eat food, that the vibration of the food goes into the prana and the prana brings it to the subtle body. And what this relates to is why it is that Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu very strongly advised his devotees, don't eat grains cooked by non-devotees. Don't eat grains cooked by sinful people, because you eat that, it will affect the prana, and then the sinful reactions, which is, you might consider, I don't know, like dust or something, or like electromagnetic residue. It's in the food, it connects to the electromagnetic system of our chakras and our prana, and it goes to our subtle body. And all of a sudden, we may start having thoughts and desires like, wow, where did that come from? I never think things like that. We may have eaten something corrupt. There's a short story that's told in the Vaishnava culture. There was a Brahmin, he was walking, he stopped at a well, he got some water, he untied the bucket and walked away with the bucket. And so he stopped a little ways down the road and said, wait, I just stole this bucket. Why would I do such a thing? I never do such. So he went back, he asked the people, who owns this well? They said, a butcher. Ah, my mind became contaminated. This is a very, very real thing. What's one of the major roads in Kenya? What's the name of a major road? Lots of traffic. Someone give me the name of a road.
So in Eldoret, it is Uganda Road.
Uganda Road? Yeah. So if we're in a vehicle and we're traveling, we don't want more mud on the windshield, right? No one takes mud, puts it, oh, this is nice. We want clear. So in our devotional life, especially in the beginning, we're already dealing with our past habits and our inclinations. We don't want more stuff to have to deal with, right? So this eating is very important. We should be especially hand-cooked grains by some sinful person. Speed limit signs. The major section of people, as far as I know, who don't like speed limit signs are people who have a burning desire to go faster than the speed limit, right? If we have no particular desire to go faster, we don't care. 50 kilometers an hour, no problem. I have no issue. But if somehow we have a burning desire, I want to go 80 kilometers, then we'll think, get rid of them. They're horrible things. I hate them, right? So with regard to the principles of bhakti, we have these 4 regulative principles, and we have these other kind of rules and regulations. If our mind has burning desires to do something else, it's going to be a problem. Sometimes people leave Krishna consciousness and they, you guys, it's too restrictive. These rules, they're stupid. Why can't I drink myself into cirrhosis of the liver? Some crazy thing like that, Why not reduce the burning desires? How about that? Instead of finding fault with the rules and regulations, why not reduce the opposition within ourselves? Why not make it easier for ourselves? And we can do that. The basic living pattern of Krishna consciousness, of sleeping in a regular way, and living within those 4 principles, it's meant to give us as clear of a windshield as possible. And when we break those principles, or even within those principles, if we overindulge, then it will put mud on the windshield, and we'll find our mind more agitated or more angry or lusty or greedy or envy, and it's just like, it's more difficult. So these regulative principles in our bhakti sadhana, they are meant to help us have as easy a time as possible. Even within the regulative principles, just like someone may say, I just have to honor prasadam 6 times a day. So, that's not sinful. It's not sinful to eat 6 times a day. But it's not that there won't be some results to doing it. If we eat too much, even if it's prasadam, our head tends to get a little thick. We'll sleep too much. We'll dream too much. It's not sinful, but it's like putting mud on the windshield. I mean, it's a lot better than being sinful, but I'm just saying there's ways to, even within the principles, we can tweak. We can make our consciousness and our practice easier and easier. So we have this, maybe the devotees know, it's called the Nectar of Instruction, the Upadeshamrita. It's a very thin booklet given by Srila Prabhupada. It's only 8 verses. But I feel Srila Prabhupada gives like a benediction or a blessing. In the beginning of that book, he says that anyone who follows this strictly is guaranteed of success. It's only 8 verses. So such an important book that Srila Prabhupada has given us to learn, to understand. So in there are many tips, how to make our devotion service as smooth and as successful as possible. And if we follow them, it will be easier. I mean, there's going to be some struggle, but we can make it easier. So let's see what else we can see in this purport. I want to end in such a way that we have time for questions. I personally don't care for long, long lectures. People often forget what they've heard and we're falling asleep, all of that. So make things short, clear, and go on. I think that's, I'll end here. Thank you. We'll open for questions.
Hare Krishna, we don't have any questions on the chat, so feel free to unmute yourself and ask your questions directly. Hare Krishna. Mansi Ganga Mataji. Age before beauty. Okay, I think if there are no people, Ravi Prabhuji, you have a question. Okay. Kindly ask your question. If you have an unstable internet, you can write it in the chat and I can read it out for you. So we have a first question on the chat. What is the most important thing, service or hearing?
Service or hearing? I take it that the question is given, based upon what I said, that we have our busy work with our hands and our legs, so to speak, and then the hearing. Although it may be said that to hear is service. Our chanting of japa, our hearing, reading Srimad Bhagavatam is service. It's not that it's something that only making garlands and making money for Krishna and working is service. No, to hear about Krishna is service. So Srila Prabhupada advised that as possible, we should read, we should hear at least an hour a day, if not 2 hours a day. We have class in the morning, we should hear something in the evening. We have our 16 rounds if we're initiated, or otherwise we probably have some set amount of japa that we're chanting. So all of that should be done. And then there may be other services that we do that involve being busy, not just hearing and chanting. But the point I was making is that we should not neglect hearing in the name of other services. Srila Prabhupada has already informed us. Lord Chaitanya has, it's known that to one degree or the other, we don't have so much interest in it. So therefore, it's something that leaders and managers and we ourselves have to be careful about to encourage, because the tendency is not to hear. The tendency is to do anything but that in general. or to do less of it. So we've been given some guidelines that we should read at least an hour a day. We should hear some lecture. We have our japa. So at least we do that. And if we can do more, the more the better. I hope that's sufficient.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Yeah.
Thank you for that lovely question. We have another question. How much of anartha nivrutti must take place in us for us to progress to the next stage?
That's a very interesting question. So by anartha nivritti nishta, I didn't go too far into it, but the Vaishnavacharyas have explained that it's kind of a blended process, that these stages don't start and stop and that's it. Just like hearing and chanting about Krishna, bhajana kriya, we're going to do that forever. It's eternal, actually. But as we do that, then anartha nivritti, and then gradually our propensity to enjoy separate from Krishna conscious activities will decrease. And as it decreases, the nishta increases. So it's simultaneous. So maybe the question could be that how far into anartha vritti does nishta begin? Basically, it begins from the beginning. Short way into doing that. As our major passions for breaking the regular principles decrease, then our faith will increase. I hope that was clear. And then nishta, going into ruchi, in the state, it's as we gain more faith, then the taste increases simultaneously. Another question?
Yes,
Sharan.
Prabhuji. Hare Krishna. Is our mind is the main obstacle in bhakti? If yes, then how do we train our mind? And how do we keep checking ourselves that we are right?
Very good question.
Yeah.
Very, very good question. How do we train our minds? I'm actually reminded of that Upadeshamrita, of this Nectar of Instruction booklet. Srila Prabhupada actually writes, and he says, he uses those words. Maybe you did that deliberately, I don't know. But he says that Bhakti Yoga is a methodical process of training our minds to lead us back to Godhead. So I would suggest, study the Nectar of Instruction. That's Srila Prabhupada's instruction. If you want to be successful, study this book, follow the instructions. That's really the main instruction. Follow the instructions of Srila Prabhupada. Yeah. Would you like me to elaborate, or would you like to present the question in a little different way? Like, are there some main things to help us train our mind?
Yes, Prabhuji, if you can elaborate, that would help.
Yeah, well, in general, we're given this sadhana of rising early before sunrise, taking a cold or cool shower as possible. We really should try to do that. If we can tolerate 5 minutes of cool or cold water on our skin, we'll be able to tolerate other things in the day too. We have to practice. We actually do have to practice tolerating. If we don't practice tolerating and we just pamper our bodies so everything is comfortable always, when will we learn? When will we get the power to tolerate others? What will happen at the time of death if we can't tolerate 5 minutes of cold water on our skin? Or our husband comes home and snaps at us. How are we going to tolerate that and not just get into a big fight with him? So just like when we chant Hare Krishna, so we tolerate, the pushing that I want to go here, I want to go here. We practice just ignoring our mind and body. We practice acting like a soul. To the extent that we try to actually act like a spirit soul, we'll get more and more shakti, more and more power to act on the spiritual platform. So no one is proposing some serious, heavy pain and suffering, but within the bhakti sadhana, such as rising at 4:30 in the morning, certainly rising before sunrise, not eating whenever the thought crosses our mind, but in general, we eat at regulated times. When we do things at regulated times, and we don't have to be fanatical, but in general, when we live our life like that, we have to tolerate our mind, because our mind may be dragging us, sleep, or eat. And we say to our mind, what is this eating? We just ate 2 hours ago. And we should talk to our mind like that, because our mind is not ourself. Our mind is the subtle body, and we are the soul. As Lord Krishna states at the end of the 3rd chapter, he says, armed with this understanding that you're transcendental to the body, mind, and senses, conquer this insatiable enemy known as lust. So our bhakti sadhana will help us to get the mental strength to be steady in our devotional life, to be not put off. That's why this bhakti sadhana is very important, that we follow it strictly, as Srila Prabhupada gave it to us. Otherwise, it'll be more difficult. But in general, just follow the instructions of the spiritual master. That's how we train our mind.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, can I share something that I heard today?
Yes, please.
Scientifically. So today, today's research, there was a paper on if you plunge yourself in cold water, that is diving, or in the swimming pool, which is around 11 degrees or 13 degrees, your body releases shock proteins, cold shock proteins, and that prevents Alzheimer's. So
Yes.
in our Shastra, it has been there since
Yes.
ages that have a bath in cold water.
Yes.
And when we do that, the proteins will be secreted, and therefore, at the time of death, we will not forget Krishna.
Yeah.
But even science is now alluding to that. This is just off the.
We should not feel. I mean, if we can't, we can't. But
Yeah.
we should try.
Yeah, but yes. So we could probably try with the cold shower and then plunge ourselves in the cold pool. Sorry, Prabhuji, for that interruption.
Yeah, no problem.
So there is another question, Hare Krishna. The concept of karma is central to Krishna consciousness. Can you imagine Krishna consciousness without karma?
I'm not sure I understand. I mean, it seems like the question is self-answered. Karma is central to Krishna consciousness. Can the question be put in a different way?
Ravi, Prabhuji?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Prabhuji,
Yes.
we can.
Oh, Hare Krishna. So I bring up this question because my friend, who's not a devotee, I was explaining to him that your situation is maybe because of your karma. And he said to me, Ravi, please don't buck pass my situation to the past. I do not accept that the problems which exist for us is because of the previous life. You can't buck pass. We got to accept responsibility for what's happening. So my question really is, if there was no the concept of karma is of course central to Krishna consciousness, but have you ever thought, what if we can't explain ourselves certain situations to karma? Does that help? Am I making myself?
Yes, I think so. I'm reminded how Srila Prabhupada shares that when he was going to school in college, Scottish Church's college, there was a professor who was denying the concept of karma.
Right.
But without the concept of karma, how does one explain what happens other than by chance? And chance doesn't explain anything, because if we think about it, chance means chance. By chance, someone may happen to sign up for a college course, but then it will be another active chance that they actually attend the first class. Right? If everything is chance, then there's a lot of chance things happening that add up to someone attending a whole 4-year program. So how else would things be explained, we might say? And by the way, reincarnation was in the Bible. It's still there to some extent. Sometimes most, or I can't say most because I don't know, but many people of the Christian faith aren't aware of this. There was a meeting of church management in the 400s, and it's historical fact. They cut it out. It was a king named Constantine, and he and his wife didn't like the idea. So they cut out different verses that were there in the Bible that directly related to repeated birth. But even now, if one studies the Bible, there are statements that describe how Jesus in a previous existence was this person, and before that he was another person. Just as an interesting thing, I mentioned that. Would you like, does that answer in any way, or would you like to add more, Ravi? Please.
No, I'd like you to, because add a bit more on this concept of karma to a non-believer. A non-believer meaning, for instance, I'm
Oh, I
in
see.
Kenya.
How to give faith or confidence in such a thing.
Because when I tell my friends, African friends, karma, and that, you mean you're gonna be reborn as a pig? I mean, are you going to go to heaven or hell? And that's it. You know, that's this
Yeah,
there.
yeah. Well,
And
Srila Prabhupada sometimes addresses it that then how does one explain that two people could be doing the same things, selling eggplant? They both have eggplant farms. They're both the same age. They're in the same area, but one of them becomes fantastically successful and sells eggplant all over Africa, and the other one does not. Why is a child born at the age of 5? They pick up the violin or they play the piano and they're so expert. How is it that sometimes a person, how is it that sometimes, not sometimes, often, a doctor will do the same treatment for the same 2 patients, and one of them it seems like they're pretty healthy, but they die. I was just talking to a doctor Sunday that I know, a devotee, and he was sharing this with me because we have this COVID virus. So he was sharing with me that there was an elderly lady. She was 95. She had stage 4 cancer. Her body was just bones, and she got the virus, but she defeated it. She passed through it. And he said he knew a whole family, 34, 44, 50 years old. They all died. And they seemed to be in healthy condition. So these things that don't seem to match up, they indicate that there's another factor. That's what Srila Prabhupada was saying. That if someone who is really healthy is getting treatment and they die for no visible, why is that? Why did that elderly lady, she should have passed on. Most people who are that sick, they pass on from this virus. It's almost guaranteed, but she lived. So it doesn't prove anything. We're not, sometimes when we talk to people, I have found it's better not to have an idea that I'm proving 100% Krishna is God. No, we can't do that. But what we can do is establish reasonable rationality. Just like when we try and establish the concept of God, no one can prove God exists. I won't even begin to think that I could prove that. But I am completely confident that I can establish reasonable, rational understanding. For example, we have no experience as a human that I've ever heard of something complicated just appearing out of nowhere. I woke up in the morning and on the table was a cake, and it just no human thinks like that. There's always some cause for things that are, complicated. So when we see this whole universe, we may not know what the creator is or any details. One thing we can know for sure, by our own human experience, there must be some intelligence. So that doesn't prove anything, you see, but it's rational, it's reasonable, I say. And I challenge anyone to show me that it's not reasonable. So the same thing for karma. We can't convince anyone. If someone is not pious enough, we can talk till we're blue in the face. They will not accept. They don't want to accept. Or they're not able to accept because of their. So for such people, if we see that they're not grasping it, we remain friendly. If we can, we want to remain friendly. Oh, well, it's all right. Let's set this aside. Would you like some prasadam? Would you like to visit our temple on Sunday? It's very beautiful. We try and engage them in some service. We don't try and force them. We can never force someone to accept. I will share something that maybe some of us are familiar, that sometimes we may have a group of people. Suppose we're at work and we're sitting at a table, or we're at home, we have relatives. So we're talking maybe to an uncle, and some other relatives are listening. So our uncle may not surrender. He may not agree to the most logical explanations that we can give, but the people who are listening, it may be very, so we may go on with our uncle a little bit longer than we would because we want to talk to the people around, you see? As a young devotee, I would go out at parks and we would do bhajan. We do it still in ISKCON. We do chanting and crowds would gather. And then we would stop and we would say something about Krishna consciousness. And it wasn't uncommon that there would be someone who was just antagonistic and they were challenging. And I would think, why is my godbrother just going on with this person? And he explained to me that I know this person's useless. He's not going to surrender, but all the people around. And it wasn't uncommon that the other people would start looking at that person that, go away, you're just being a nonsense, So I just mentioned that as an interesting thing. Robbie?
Thank you, Prabhu. That was
Yeah.
now I know to pull back when I talk about karma.
Yeah. Here's something I suggest you might do. If you go to one of these on database.com, or if you go to vanisource.org, these are collections of all of Prabhupada's writings. They're very useful, and they have a search function. So you could type in there, Prabhupada karma, and then everything that he said about karma will come up.
Prabhuji,
That's
please
great.
can you repeat those two sites?
Yeah, one of them is vanisource, VANI source.org, and the other one is database.io. All of Srila Prabhupada's books and most of his writings, everything in one place. And it also has a search function.
Thank you, Prabhuji. I know we have our time is gone, but we have one question, Prabhuji. Just the last question, if you don't
Okay,
mind.
I'll keep it short.
It's okay, but I was more conscious of your time. We are okay. How do you know that we are cutting down our anarthas or just getting our karma back?
Very nice. And actually, I didn't answer the other part of a previous question about anarthas. The other part of the question is, how do we know? So we should read Bhagavad Gita so that we know what the thinking patterns, what the character is of someone in sattva guna. It's not that complicated. It's not a big academic subject, but there's certain qualities of thinking that we can identify. That, today or last week, my mind was really in the mode of passion, much more in the mode of ignorance. In the mode of ignorance, we're kind of lazy. We don't want to do things. We put things off. And then in the mode of passion, we're like, yeah, I want to earn a lot of money. I want to eat some good food. I want to have this sensual enjoyment, and tend to be a little passionate. You know, we get upset when people are kind of calm and quiet. It's too boring for us. It's like, you're too cool-headed. So that's a symptom of passion. And so there are also qualities of sattva guna. We want to, the highest is our original nature, is Suddha Sattva, but Srila Prabhupada and Lord Krishna instructed for us, our first business is as strong and as much in Sattva Guna as we can be. So from the 14th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita on, you just read through those, and you will know whether you're going up or you're coming down. In general, if we find our mind more lusty, more greedy, more irritable, more lazy, then we can know that our anarthas are increasing. And if we find that we're more interested to hear about Krishna and our mind is clearer, then we're going up. Srila Prabhupada simply put it, if you find yourself becoming more attracted to Krishna, you're heading in the right direction. And if you find that your mind is attracted to other things more, something's going on. You should see, maybe you're missing some part of sadhana. Even if we're doing good sadhana, Srila Prabhupada explained that when you sweep a room, we should know this, that when you sweep a room, what happens, there's more dust for a while. So even though we may be chanting really good, we're doing everything pretty good, we still may have days that, wow, boy, my mind. We shouldn't get too upset about that. We just ignore it, it'll go away, and we keep on going. And maybe we let other people know that I'm not having a good day, you might not want to talk to me.
So,
Any other questions?
so it can oscillate even
Yes.
in sadhana.
Yes, and it doesn't necessarily mean that we're doing something wrong. If it goes on for days, it could be, or we may be making some offense.
So at that time, we need an association. We could probably talk to somebody.
Yes, very good. Yes, we consult. Oh, it's really different. Maybe help me understand what I could do different, what it is.
Okay, so we have exhausted all the questions on the chat. There are comments like, thank you for the explanation and thank you for an excellent class. There is one more question from Prahlad. Prahlad, ask your question, please. Prahlad?
Yes, am I audible?
Yes, Prahlad, Hare Krishna.
Yeah, Hare Krishna. Earlier in the class, you had said something that we must never eat grains from a non-devotee's place because it may affect our path in Krishna consciousness. So do you agree with me? Let's say if it's a devotee who's initiated, let's say they went to work and then their boss said something to them, so the rest of their day they are just feeling sad or angry, and then they go home, they make prasad, and then at the end you find like the prasad is too spicy or too salty, you know. So does the mood, like, you know, also when you're eating the food you may also get a different mood, like, oh, why has he made the prasadam like this? So does this also affect our path towards Krishna consciousness?
Yes, just because we're initiated is no automatic anything. There's no rubber stamping in Krishna consciousness that I'm initiated, I'm a Vaishnava. Maybe not. Depends on if you're actually following. It's not, well, I love Vrindavan, I was there in 2004. Well, that's nice, but what are you doing right now? You know? So to the extent that a devotee is following, the basic sadhana, and they're actually in good consciousness, then the food stuff will be accordingly. And of course, it should be basically good. I mean, but if, somehow we're visiting the house of a devotee who has kind of fallen away and they're drinking and, they're having women or whatever, it could affect us. I thought it was kind of funny that, sometimes if our mind is disturbed when we cook, we may not cook so nicely and it doesn't turn out good. So yeah, that affects us, of course. But is that what you meant, Prahlad? You were talking
Yes,
about,
yes.
yeah. Sometimes we can tell when someone is upset. Were you upset today because the prasadam doesn't taste like it usually does?
Or if you are angry, you'll put a lot more chilies. Probably.
Yes. Oh yes, like that. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you, Prabhu.
I want to thank all of you for allowing me to be of service. I feel so much benefited in my life by your association, by having the opportunity to talk about Krishna consciousness. I really don't think of myself as anything, and I'm not special. I'm a devotee. I'm on the path of Krishna consciousness. Perhaps I've had some more experience over the years, and I thank you.
Thank you, Prabhuji. We have benefited from your association, and we'd like to have encounters with you regularly. So probably if you have time, if only you have time, we'd like
Okay,
to.
Hare Krishna.
We'd
Yeah,
like
there's so many devotees to give class, but if occasionally I can be involved, then I would appreciate it.
if you have a specific day that you would like us to join the group, we'd appreciate so that we have that day exclusively for you. Okay, so I'll ask Mansi Ganga Mataji to get in touch with you and probably chart out a time.
Okay, very good.
Is Path Prabhuji there? Path Prabhuji? Mansi Ganga Mataji, do you want to say something? I see the video on.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank Mahesh Patel, who's there. He's been coming once in a while, so I saw him today, so I'm really happy to see. And there's a Krishna Patel there. I would like to, I don't know who she is. And of course, all the usual, Madhurupa is there after a long time. Pundarik Prabhu is there, Ravi. Anyway, thanks to everyone, as you always do. But this Krishna Patel, I'd like to know, and I was very happy to see Mahesh because he had his video on that he sat through this session. Anyway, hand over. Kritika, you can do the conclusion if Parth is not there.
Path Prabhuji is there, he's unmuted.
Yes, I am here, but you can do the conclusion, Mataji. I am here, no problem.
No, Prabhuji, you do. That is your service.
Okay, no problem. Thank you very much, His Grace Din Sharan Prabhuji. We are so grateful as a senior devotee and a Prabhupada disciple. So enlightened too much about this karma and the action and what is the Krishna conscious karma. I am so grateful, also grateful to Mansingaga Mataji. He's bring this in the platform like the great Vaishnava Prabhupada disciple. We are so grateful. Also, same time, we thanks all the devotees across the world. They are joining in this platform. On behalf of ISKCON Eldorado, we thanks all of you. And also humble request, Din Sharan Prabhuji, please, if you have time, please once in a week or twice in a week, we can give the time continuously so that we can asking more questions and get the answers. For glorification of His Grace Din Sharan Prabhuji and all the devotees join in this group, please chant Hare Krishna mantra once. Then we are concluding session. Please join. Hare Krishna, Hare
Krishna, Krishna,
Krishna, Krishna, Hare
Hare Rama,
Rama,
Hare Rama,
Rama,
Hare
Rama, Hare
Hare Krishna.
Hare
Thank you
Krishna.
very much.
Krishna.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
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 Vancha kalpa tarubhyasya kripa sindhubhya eva cha
Devacha.
nam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.